Welcome to episode 7 of the Happier Active podcast. I can't believe I'm up to 7 already. This conversation was really interesting. We talk a lot about speaking flow and how to kind of access that part of you, especially when you're talking about things that you're passionate about or in relation to either setting boundaries or having to say no to things, and how you can use your inner state and to use your voice more effectively. So this is really great if you're someone who has a job where you have to talk to people a lot or in speaking situations that you find as a point of stress or difficulty. But I think there's ways it can apply to your everyday life as well, which is why I found it so interesting. And Thea's so knowledgeable and has loads of really great advice. I mean, I have to say, just from this, 45, 50-minute conversation, I got loads of great little tidbits that I can use in my life. And so it's definitely worth a listen just for that. And if it's an area that you struggle in or something that you want to know more about, I definitely recommend working with her. And I'm sure after listening to this, you'll see why she's obviously great at her job. And as always, would love to hear any thoughts or feedback. I've got a very busy 2 or 3 weeks coming up, and then after that I'm going to start doing the monthly Q&As. So if you have any questions relating to health, in particular women's health, send them in, and then I'll start doing a sort of quick 5 to 10 minute once a month Friday episode. Enjoy. There are many ways to find your path to better health and happiness, and what works is highly individualised. And my philosophy is that most people are more likely to find that if they're active participants in their own journey. So this is a space to start exploring some of the rich and varied areas in which people practice, so you can start thinking about what resonates with you and discover new or different practices to either start or deepen your own health practice. And today I have Thea from Working with Voice. So hi, and why don't you tell us a bit about what you do?
Hi, thanks so much for having me here, Ellie. And I'm a speaking flow coach. And the reason why the word flow is in there is because I separate it from a speaking skill coach. And the skill flow piece, they're both really essential. But flow is basically how do you show up as yourself, especially for what you care about and what you believe in. And I specialise in working with change makers and helping them get out of their heads and into their body in order to speak up with flow and create movements and change in line with their values.
Oh, that is really interesting, and not something I think that maybe people think about as a way to show up differently, because I guess we use our voices all the time, but we don't necessarily think about how they can affect what we're doing.
That's right. And speaking flow is more about how you use your communication energy and whether you're using it in a way that drains you or energizes you. And that's why working with change makers, I love them so much, because they've already got something they give two hoots about. Can I swear on this podcast?
Yep.
But it's basically it's like, what do you give a shit about? What are you willing to speak up for? What are you willing to go over your own discomfort threshold of being seen and heard for? And is it with your father-in-law, or is it with the company that you're working in, or is it for systemic change and you're working in an activist or advocating way within an organisation that you've founded, or are you doing activism and somebody's interviewing you while you're on a march for women's rights? It's like these are all moments where you speak up for what you believe in, and those moments can terrify you and exhaust you and eventually overwhelm you and lead to burnout, or they can energize you and empower you and then inspire and motivate other people to take aligned actions with what you're speaking up for.
Wow, that's amazing. I really...
Thank you.
Yeah. How did you get into it? Just for
the quick answer is I made it up.
Great.
The long answer is the long answer is I very much created my own niche following my own joy and the things that I believe in, the things that I care about, and what I want to use my skill set and my life for. And, I'm trained as a voice and speech coach. I trained to teach actors. I learnt very quickly that wasn't my field. And having had zero experience in there and not that interested in theatre, I'll go to theatre. So then I found business and I was like, oh, cool. Speaking, coaching and business. I like this. People are like using their own words. This is cool. So I cut my teeth doing that in London. And I absolutely loved it. I worked with so many different industries, so many different levels of seniority, from founders to CEOs to people wanting to just get promotions and raises, and also started working with excuse me, people wanting to just start to speak up in various different areas of their life, have more confidence, or maybe they're doing, they've got a wedding coming up and they have avoided public speaking their entire life and now they can't get out of it. So, I did like so many different areas. And I ended up here because I had a client who I had a very well-paying client. And I should have been like really happy getting this money, but I wasn't. I wasn't because it was so misaligned with my values, and it stuck out like a sore thumb. This person was asking me how can you make it look like I care about what I'm talking about when he absolutely hated his job.
Yeah.
But he did, he felt he had to stay in his job. There was a lot of pressure. He loathed his work. He had contempt for it and boredom. And he was like, how could you make me look like I'm really passionate about what I'm talking about? And basically what the undercurrent of that, put subtitles on it, how can you teach me to lie?
Yeah.
And it was a real turning point because I won't teach people to lie. This skill set is so powerful. Being able to be a charismatic, inspiring speaker is so powerful, as we're seeing on stages everywhere all over the world at the moment. It's no accident that Donald Trump is such an emphatic, powerful speaker, that he has been so successful in his campaign. So it's a dangerous skill in the hands of those who want to do harm. And so I can't, in line with my own values, put my skill set into the hands of people who either don't give a shit about anything, they're just apathetic about life. And then it's sort of like, well, what are you doing with this? It's not going anywhere. Or people who want to create harm.
Yeah.
Or are unknowingly creating harm.
Yeah.
And I can see that that's where it would go. So it was a real turning point of like, right, I'm only going to work with people for whom I could stand behind and be like, go for it. You go put that message in the world, even if it's not necessarily like I want to change the world, but you want to start speaking up for something somewhere that you believe in, then this skill set, this speaking flow skill set, will draw upon that desire, need, and congruence with what you want to communicate, and completely change the way you show up in your life.
Oh, I love that. And I think it's interesting because I think all of us can, even if we don't do much public speaking, can relate to times when we've had to have a conversation that we were finding difficult, and then we knew that we weren't showing up well. That's like a difficult conversation you've got to have with a partner, or like you say, with your boss.
That's right.
Because you want to get promotion, or you don't necessarily have to be doing public speaking to need skills to help you talk better.
Totally. In fact, I would say most of the people I work with aren't necessarily, or wouldn't think of themselves as speakers. They haven't got speaker in their bio.
Yeah.
But what they have got is a need to create content online. They need to do the 1 to 3 minute video or the 30-second video, or they're finding themselves being interviewed on podcasts, or they are having to go for investment in order to get to the next stage of what they're doing, or they're speaking up for people in policy environments, in parliaments, in, you know, so it's not necessarily I'm a public speaker. It's I mean, I have a threshold for discomfort when it comes to speaking up in these particular environments. I'm fine one-to-one, but put me in front of 5 people and I'm bricking it, right? So it really depends. Put a microphone in front of me or switch a camera and I'm bricking it. So you can do it in some contexts, but then all these other contexts you can't. And so it's like, how do we join up the dots?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I originally trained as a teacher, and I can easily public speak in a classroom of 20 people when I know what I'm talking about and it's was my subject. But yeah, put me in a room of 20 adults who talking about something that isn't a curriculum that I know really well, and I would be a complete mess. So it is, a lot of it's just about the situation.
Yeah. And the thing that's happening there is your fear of, if and correct me if I'm wrong, is the fear of judgment or the fear of looking stupid.
Yeah.
And that's the main reason why people disconnect from their own flow.
Yeah.
And people's reasons for that are really, really, really vary, but the disconnect is a fear of being judged, essentially, or not meeting the mark that we all hold in our heads. Yeah, and it's that disconnect moment is a misalignment with the context itself. You've somehow created a story that is now creating a fear in your body, and so you can't access your own desire to communicate in the same way as you would if you were with your best mate or in the teaching context that you're so familiar with.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I can see that being extra difficult if it's something you're really passionate about. So like when you're talking about people who want to do policy change or activism, that kind of thing, or going for investment, where the fear of getting it wrong might feel like there's huge consequences. And so that can
exactly
weirdly hold you back, even though it's something you're very passionate about.
Absolutely. I often talk about, you don't have to get it right, you need to make it felt. And so the fear of not being good enough, not getting it right enough, is means that you basically disconnect from your body, and you become a talking head, a head only, and you're sort of hyper analyzing yourself in the moment. You're almost too focused on yourself because of the anxiety of getting it wrong. But it's not about getting it right. It's about being in what you're saying, especially if it's something you really care about. Every fibre of your being can feed into what you want to communicate, and you are immersed in this theme and the subject because it's something you really care about. So you have so many data points, touch points, resonance moments, story moments that you can draw upon, but only if you can access them. And it's almost like you shut a bolted door on your access inside yourself, on how you can access all of those pieces.
Yes.
When you become hyper focused on the fear of getting it wrong.
Yeah, and I'm sure everyone who listens to this can think of times when afterwards they've thought, oh, I wish I'd said that, or I meant to say this thing and I totally forgot, and it was one of my main points.
I mean, I would write a check for anyone who hasn't experienced that, because I'm so confident everyone has experienced that 100%.
Yeah, that's right. I find this whole area really interesting, because I find myself talking a lot about, stress and nervous system calming with people in all kinds of different contexts. And I find now, like before I do things, if I do some breathing, that helps get my head in the right space for things. But I can feel sometimes, even when I've done that, the sort of my breath getting off, and then that kind of knocks everything else out.
It's wild, isn't it? It's wild. I work with the breath a lot in my work, and I work with the 3 communication centers, or the 3 centers, and they are the gut, the heart, and the head, and they each offer a different intelligence into the way that you communicate. And the 3 centers are an amazing thing to tune into in your body, because once you know how to align them and then work with them when you're communicating in the moment, they kind of look after you, because in order to access flow, you need to have regulated your nervous system to the point where you can hear your body and your intuition and your creativity. And so it's a fantastic way to counter the stress levels and the anxiety levels and the overwhelm levels that so often accompany just bloody life these days. And it's almost like speaking flow is like almost like an invitation to look after yourself better. And the very act of doing that increases your flow, and then it becomes a positive loop rather than a negative loop. So then flow is feeding your confidence, because you're like, that went really well, I spoke really well just then. And then you like have that endorphin release of, I did a good job. And then next time you do it, you do your breathing exercise, so then you are also completing a stress cycle. Or I dance and run. So one of my main ways to release stress in my body is to move. I really am a mover.
Yeah.
That might not be everybody's way, but it works really well for me. So that's my go-to. And when I do that, I am releasing stored stress in my body in order, because I know it will help me access speaking flow. Yeah. Right? And so the things that you need, the conditions you need to create, because speaking flow is for everyone. It's not a gift only some people have. It's just that some people can access it more readily than others. But it's a set of conditions you can train yourself into and practice and then up in your life. And until the point where your flow baseline is quite high.
Yeah.
And that's by looking after your well-being. Yeah. So instead of staying up really late getting that presentation ready, get it ready enough, go to sleep.
Yeah.
Go and have a long bath and go to sleep. And I literally did that the other day. My slides weren't quite ready. I hadn't quite finished my presentation notes on this big webinar I was doing. But I knew that I was at my cutoff time for getting enough sleep. And so I just put a bit of trust into the rest of that piece, went and had a really long bath, and I slept really well rather than staying up really late and then having really broken sleep because I've got too much blue light in my eyes and my brain is too busy and I'm waking up every 40 minutes. I slept well and it went well because my presence was good. My body was okay and my flow flowed.
Yeah, and I guess then you're trusting that you know enough about your subject that you can talk about it confidently, even if your notes aren't quite right, but it's more important to be well rested and calm.
That's right. It really is. And if you care about anything, let's remember that being an expert is 10,000 hours of practice. Yeah. Have you thought about it, talked about it, read about it, listened about it for more than 10,000 hours, if you really counted up the hours? I'm going to say yes, if you got to the point of giving that much of a shit about something. Yeah. You've really leaned into something. So we're well past the expert mark, actually. It's now a question of trust, self-trust.
Yeah. And that's really hard for people.
You've got it in the bag. No, it's self-trust. Yeah, it is hard. Yeah. Lots of people find that really hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess in public speaking in particular, or presentation scenarios, that can be even harder because it feels so, or you can build it up to be like a very public failure. So it can feel like it might be very embarrassing because there's so many people. But actually, sometimes when you do something and you come off going, oh, that was terrible, I made a mistake. And everyone else will be like, what? I didn't even notice that. So most of the time, unless it's really egregious, they're not going to notice. And even then, if you trip over, a couple of people might laugh at you, but most people are going to feel more warmly towards you because you're like a human who makes mistakes. It's not.
That really is true. Inside. There's very few. Exactly. There's very few contexts in which you making a mistake, tripping over your words or forgetting what you wanted to say or losing your place or whatever. There's very few contexts in which that is actually a problem. I actually like it when I see it on someone's social media video and they trip up or they pause or they knock something over and they don't edit it out. It's like, oops. Anyway, what I was saying was, it's just like they just carry on. They just go over it. It's like if you fall off the curb, do you catch yourself and keep walking, or do you fall flat on your face, lie down in the road, dying, crying with shame, and not get up and get run over instead? Those are your options. But it really is rarely an issue, and especially that is a culture shift. It's important to acknowledge that this is a culture shift, since we've had so much more video content in our lives, and on the go impromptu content and lives like Insta lives and LinkedIn lives. There's so much more live content that isn't just done by broadcasters, official broadcasters. So we're just seeing real people going live on video, reporting or presenting or sharing stuff that's important to them in that moment, right? And is resonating with us. And that very cultural difference, means that we've moved from a perfection story of you have to be a professional presenter in order to be allowed to put content into the world, to anyone and everyone can create content. We are a content culture, and actually we're still sort of, especially people who are, let's say, 35 plus, are still holding on to the story of it needs to be perfect to be good, when actually, if you look at Gen Z, they give a lot less of a they just care a lot less about whether it's a perfect piece of content and they just chuck it out there. And it's a sort of relatability that I think people who are over 35 struggle with more, because of feeling like that being professional means being perfect, and they've somehow intertwined those two pieces.
Yeah, and actually, so my sister-in-law she runs like an online Pilates studio, and her videos are beautiful and they're so good. So I asked her when I started doing more online, how she does it, and she was like, oh my god, I can't believe you think they're good. I feel so embarrassed when I do them still. I feel like I'm so awkward. And you just have to do it, and the more you do it, the more. So now I've started doing that. I don't worry about what my hair looks like. Because I think before I was getting in my own way, I was like, oh, I've got to do my hair or put some makeup on, whereas now I'm like, right, I've got something I want to say, I'm just going to film it and chuck it up. And the more I've done that, the more I'm getting better at it, because it's like a muscle, isn't it? You've got to just do it. But also the less self-conscious I feel, and I'm just concentrating on what I'm saying, not on all the other things like, it's got to be perfectly edited, I've got to have perfect hair, put makeup on, whatever, tidy the room beforehand, or worry about whether the dog's got on my lap halfway through. And I think it's better because it's more natural anyway, and then people respond to it better because there's not as much artifice.
You know the 80-20 rule that is slung about everywhere in speaking flow. It's slung everywhere. In speaking flow, what people think, if you go to like speaking as a skill, communication skills, and it's like prepare. So it's an 80-20 prep, and then delivery is 20%, right? Yeah. In flow, it's flipped completely. It's 20% prep, 80% flow delivery. So you're shifting the dynamic to one of, instead of perfection, to self-trust. So it's self-doubt to self-trust. You are also moving preparation on content and getting the exact words and making sure I don't forget them and memorizing it, over to making sure that you understand what if you're, what you want to say is a coat hanger, all you need is the hook. And I don't just mean the hook in like a social media sense. I mean, what is the main thrust of your message? If you've got that, the rest will just hang off it. And that will come through flow. You'll say it in one particular way that day, and then knock out another video in 2 days' time and say it in a slightly different way. They're going to resonate with different audiences because you're showing up differently, because you're more, I don't know, you're just feeling more sensitive that day. So you share a more vulnerable story that day, and somehow that's the way that you find your way through your content. It's like different doorways happen because of flow rather than over preparing. Yes, preparation is super important, but over preparing literally blocks flow. You're trying to control flow when you need to allow flow.
Yeah, I really think that's interesting, and that comes back to the gut thing. And I think something that a lot of people have lost touch with is, people say, oh, trust your gut, but they often haven't really thought about what that means, and they've really lost touch with that. And that's certainly something that I've worked on quite a lot, is reconnecting with those instinctual feelings.
Yeah, your intuition is one of the most powerful things that you have available to you, and it's so good when you're connected to it. And all of us can think of an experience when we have. I haven't spoken to anyone, whether it be friends, family, clients, whatever, who have never experienced their intuition.
Yeah,
because it's innate to being human, and being alive, really, in many ways. But it's a really big part of being a conscious being. Yeah. Right? Is that your subconscious is picking up on subtle signs and cues everywhere all the time, from inside yourself and in your external environment. And speaking flow is an instrument through which the intuition communicates.
That's really powerful. And then what happens when people are really nervous about speaking publicly, and they have to, and that can feel like a gut feeling. So how do people separate the two?
Well, the gut feeling when you get really nervous is, holy shit, I'm going to die. I need to run away now. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's a fight-flight response.
Yeah.
And interesting fact that excitement and fear use the same part of your nervous system. Mm-hmm. And it's the story that you tell to yourself about how you're interpreting that sensation, which is adrenaline, right? Even coming onto this podcast, I get a small spike in adrenaline and cortisol because I'm in a heightened situation. I'm being video recorded, audio recorded. It's going public. There's nothing I can do about it. Yeah. Right? Once it's out there, it's out there. So I get a spike. I get a mini fight-flight response because it's really not a big deal for me. But I recognize that I've got a spike. But the story I tell is awesome. I get to go and share my story, my work with people who will resonate with it, with whom it can help, inspire, motivate. Maybe you'll come and work with me. That's an exciting opportunity for me. So that's the story that I'm telling myself about this moment when I get my adrenaline spike. The story that people who have a habitually fearful relationship with a heightened speaking moment, whether it's public speaking or an interview or a conflict conversation or, whatever. So you have a habitual fear relation dynamic with speaking up in some way. Is the first thing to do is deal with the stress. So do you know about stressors and stress response, the difference between the two?
A little bit, but I would love to hear you.
I would say it's a foundational piece that everyone should be taught in school. I think it's this important. As soon as my son has a tiny bit more language, he'll be learning about it. but suffice to say, this is the work of, it really came to the forefront through the work of Emily and Amelia Nagoski, and they wrote a book called Burnout, which I recommend everyone reads, whether you have experienced burnout or not. It's an absolute banger. So good. It's a blockbuster for the burnout world. Honestly, please read it. And they write really well. And if you don't like reading, the YouTube, they've got YouTubes, which are great. It's really great. Just go and learn this stuff. So the reason why it's so cool is because the stressor and the stress response need to be separated, and then you can recognize which one is doing what in your body, and you would have different strategies for each one. When we treat stress as one lump, we do ourselves a disservice of not completing the stress cycles, right? And a stressor is, oh my God, this email is so stressful. Oh my God, I've got an interview coming up. I'm so stressed. Oh my God, my talk is in half an hour. I'm so stressed. This is a stressor, right? The stress response is everything that's happening in your body, cortisol, adrenaline, fight, flight response on steroids, the story that you're creating about it, the reactions that you're having, what you're choosing to do instead. Maybe you're like going for six poos. Maybe you're kind of reading and over rereading your notes, and you're sort of panicking, and all of the things that you choose to do in that moment, they're your stress response. So the stress response and the stressor, to separate them, stressor, email, stop reading the email for now, right? Just shut off your phone or walk away from your computer just for a minute. Stressor, you have an interview. Well, the interview is coming up. Maybe the interview is, you're going to put that to one side. It's tomorrow. It's not happening right now, but you're experiencing like it is happening right now. So you're going to remind yourself that it's tomorrow. Yeah. And then you can go stressor, stress response, sorry. So the stress response, there are 7 different ways to release stress in your body. And they don't have anything to do with the email, the interview, the talk coming up. They just have to do with hormones in your body and the story you're telling yourself. Yeah. This is your window of opportunity. So here you go, oh, I'm having a stress response, right? Yeah. I'm having a stress response. I'm just going to go for a really brisk walk.
Yeah, get outside, top one.
I'm going to get outside. I'm just going to get on the mat and do some stretching. I'm going to find somebody I really enjoy hugging and ask them for a hug.
Yeah.
Right? These are all ways that you can release the stress, complete the stress cycle. Yeah. And if you complete the stress cycle, you then come back to the stressor. Maybe it's been dealt with, maybe it hasn't. If it hasn't been dealt with, you can come to it from a place of, oh, I can actually engage with this. I have some bandwidth to make choices about how I want to show up in this interview, how I want to walk on stage, right? So when you separate the two, you can then have a strategy for how you will deal with completing the stress cycle that then enables you to then relate differently to the stressor, which created the stress. They're not the same thing. And I think that is so powerful.
Yeah, really powerful. And I think sometimes in the world at the moment, people feel this like huge pressure to reply instantly to things and to and so that can add into that, where it feels like a big momentous thing to not immediately reply to an email or to not immediately. And I actually with my business, I don't have my email on my phone, so it's only on my computer. I don't have nice. I try and do the social media bit in the evening, but other than that, because to have that separation, otherwise when people are sending me messages late at night, you just never turn off, and to have that separation is really helpful. And I've seen more and more in emails I get from people saying things like, between 5 and 7 I'm doing better, I'm with my children, so I don't respond to anything in those times. And I love that, because having that separation is I think a big part being able to complete those stress cycles, but also stopping them. Everything doesn't have to be now.
Absolutely. And in terms of so say you've got to go up on stage, there'll be multiple moments at which the stressor is triggering a stress response in your body. When you get asked to give the talk, when you start doing the preparation, when you imagine yourself going on stage just on a Wednesday afternoon, you're like, oh shit, that talk's coming up on Friday. Oh my God, I'm really stressed about that. It isn't actually happening now. The day before, the night before, so you're not sleeping, then the day of the talk. So all of these have become stressor points, stress response triggered. You probably haven't completed any of these stress cycles. So now you've got a stack of incomplete stress cycles that are now going to show up as a parade the moment before you're meant to get on stage. They're going to have all their bells and whistles out, and they're going to make you feel like you're going to have a panic attack. Okay? Yeah. So, in terms of working with that, complete the stress cycle each time. Notice that you've got stressed about it. do something about it. It's not actually happening now. You can complete that stress cycle.
Yeah.
So then when you get to the point where you're going to go on stage, you've done the work, you've done the prep, you've done the rehearsal, you're feeling good about your content. You're genuinely feeling good about your content, but you're feeling terrible about standing on stage. Mm-hmm. But what you've done is you've completed these stress cycles. So when you get to the point where you're going to step on stage, you have some bandwidth. Mm-hmm. And then in that moment, you would have a practice that you do, whether it be, for some people, it's square breathing for 5 minutes before they go on stage. If you don't know what that is, or box breathing, it's sometimes called. Mm-hmm. It's breathe in for 4, out, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. They're going to do that for a solid 5, 10, 15 minutes before they go on stage. Yeah. That's going to give them so much more grounding. Or you're going to do a tense and release practice in your body. You're going to tense every muscle in your body and then release it. You can start, some people start at the top and work their way down. Some people start at the bottom and work their way up. It doesn't really matter which one makes you feel better. Mm-hmm. You're going to really tune into your message, which is a way that I really work with people a lot, is to anchor yourself into what is the thing that you want to convey, speak up for, really get across. And how can you bring that into your body in a way that makes you feel emboldened by it, almost like it's filling you up and blowing you up. If you were like a blow up person of yourself, This is like put all the air in and you're like ready. These are all practices that you can only have the bandwidth to do if you have completed the stress cycles on the way there, so that you have a buffer, a window into which you can go, I'm going to do my pre-get on stage thing now. But if you're in a borderline panic attack, it's hard to get yourself down from there, to get yourself to a regulated point enough to get on stage without the fear being really loud in your system. So it's not about what do you do in the moment before you go on stage. It's how do you look after yourself in relation to the level of fear that you experience in relation to speaking up, as you get closer to the point where you're going to speak up.
Yeah, really interesting. And having that, it's all part of that same preparedness, isn't it? It's not just preparing your content, but preparing your body and your mindset is, well, like you said, with the flipping the 80-20, that's almost as important as what you're going to say. Yeah. There's a podcast that I listen to, it's actually in the comedy world, but one of the questions they ask the comedians at the beginning is like, is there any like rituals or things that you have to do before you go on stage?
Great question.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, the variety, because there are obviously some people who, even though they're really experienced, still get really, really stressed out and have to do a whole load of stuff. And then there are other people who are like, oh no, I'll be sat in the green room chatting and then I'll hear them call my name and I can just walk out. And it's amazing the like level of variety that even people who professionally, sometimes 3 times a night, go on stage, still need to do their breathing or their pacing or warm-ups or...
And also, like, your threshold will be different for different contexts. And it's really important to notice which contexts do you find the most fear-inducing or feel the greatest reputational risk, or which is ultimately an ego risk, right? Let's be honest, it's our ego freaking out. But yeah, to speak into that piece is each person's threshold is different, and then each person's threshold for different contexts is different. And almost everyone I work with is more towards an introverted type. It isn't as simple as an extrovert introvert, but they then it's not their natural place to just be a bold speaker, otherwise they wouldn't be contacting me, right? So they wouldn't even know they need me. But suffice to say, either they feel they get really exhausted by social or speaking or externalized interactions, whether it's for a video or for a person in front of them. And knowing how to look after yourself in order to up your flow baseline is 80% of the work. Yeah. And then the rest really just drops into place.
Yeah.
The rest
because,
just drops
like you
into
say,
place.
Most people, when they're in those positions, they've been asked to do them for a reason. they are experts in what they're doing. They know what they're going to talk about, and it's really
yeah.
That feels
Exactly.
like the issue, but it's not really the issue. The issue is the getting in your own way.
People think that preparing their content is the issue, and it's actually it's preparing your state.
Yeah.
Your content is in the bag. It's in every fibre of your being, and it's going to show up in so many different ways. And part of the speaking flow work is to understand how your being offers you insights, intuition, inspiration in the moment. You know, are you more of a sensations type person, or maybe you get ideas, or maybe you get memories, or, you know, we all get all of them, but understanding how your being communicates to your consciousness is unique to you.
Yes. And that's often the hardest thing, is finding, and that's why I started this podcast, is because there's so many different ways you can do all these things, and it's so much of what works is about finding that little thing that works for you, or hearing someone sometimes make a throwaway comment, or and suddenly it can completely change everything, because suddenly you found the thing that will click, and you can do that nervous system work, which is just foundational to almost every part of having a happier, healthier life, basically.
Oh God, absolutely. 100%. 100%. It really is. It's a whole constellation of things, right?
I was saying on this to someone else a few weeks ago, how I discovered breathwork was I was having therapy, and my therapist kept talking about it, and eventually I was like, oh, I'm just going to do it to shut her up. Obviously breathing is not going to do anything. And like literally within a week, my whole life was changed.
I love that. I love that story so much.
Because I just thought it was so woo. I was like, obviously that's not going to do anything. I'm like so chronically stressed. And it just, honestly, within a week, I was sleeping better. It's like less anxious all the time. Essentially.
You're like the ultimate testimonial for breathwork. I love that. Wait, I didn't say this at the beginning, but the way that I found the door into training as a voice and speech coach was so by accident. I didn't even know the field existed. I didn't know my profession was a thing. I'd never heard of it. And I'm in my early 20s, and I had depression at the time, and my mum kept asking me, and I'm so glad she did, what brings you joy? And honest to God, the only thing at that point that brought me joy was an Earl Grey and a quadruple chocolate brisket. Right?
Peak
that was
British.
it. That was like my baseline was, I know, right? But it's true. And I was like, simple pleasures. I'm starting real small here. It's just a good cup of tea and a good biscuit.
Yeah.
But then I also noticed that singing, because I grew up in a very singing family and a very folk music family. And when I sang, I felt myself again. And if you've ever experienced depression, you'll know that you have no idea who you are or why you should exist or why anyone would be interested in you. It's just a fog of nothingness and self-hate. Right? And it's appalling. And but when I sang, I knew exactly who I was. And it was such a remembering of myself whenever I did it. So then I started going to open mic nights and just singing on my own, just singing a song, just standing up there singing a song, because that was how I'd grown up. So it wasn't daunting to me to not perform with a guitar or something or another person. Just got up and sang a song, and then I sat down, feeling amazing. And then it would go away again. I feel depressed again, and then I'd do it again, right? And so it was that was how I flowed.
Yeah.
I flowed when I was singing. And recognizing that singing looked after me and helped me remember who I was the first door into this work. The next door was having a mentor who was like, have you ever thought about training as a voice coach? No. What's a voice coach?
Yeah.
Right? And then I found this working with people's voices was was as powerful as having refound my own, working with other people's, also helped me access my own flow. So at this point, I'm following joy as the trigger. It's giving me flow, and it's taken me to what I do now.
Yeah. That is really powerful, isn't it? And I think it's foundational, and it can be really difficult, especially when people are in jobs that they don't enjoy, but trying to start finding those moments of joy outside of that, if that is the case, that can help you get towards, because it can feel impossible when you're depressed or when lots of things in your life aren't what you like, to start slowly moving towards finding that joy in everything.
And that's where speaking up really comes in. You don't have to be an activist to speak up, but you're going to have one brave conversation that's in line with who you know you are, that is saying no to something that you don't want to do, even when it's super expected of you, but it's not aligned and you can't do it anymore. You know, that is a speaking flow moment, and it's also a realignment of self moment. And so the more you speak up for what you believe in, the more you align with yourself, your stronger your self-alignment, self-actualization becomes. And it literally changes your life.
Yeah, that is amazing. So I've taken a lot of time, but before we finish, I would just like to follow on a little bit on that. Because I guess for a lot of people, that's a really hard place to start, is saying no to things can feel very scary. And so often people don't. And what kind of advice do you have for people around that?
The conflict conversation piece.
Yeah, or just saying no, even to small things, can feel impossible sometimes.
The best way to say no to something is to create a state for yourself that has just enough strength to say no and keep breathing. Yeah. Like when we say no and we find it really hard, you may or may have not noticed that you probably hold your breath. So saying no, and only saying no, and if you I can't remember the name of them right now, but there's a woman recovering people pleaser who's written an incredible book about people pleasing, and I'll find it for your notes so you can drop it in. But she's got some amazing video content about saying no and then just being okay with no. And you don't have to add anything else. You don't have to justify why you've said no. Your no is okay. There's a woman I listen to called Tony Jones who's got a whole song called No is Bay.
Amazing.
It's so good. I highly recommend anyone listens to that song. In fact, embolden yourself with that song before you say no to somebody. Complete the stress. So you know you're going to say no to someone, so you've got a spike in your adrenaline. We have a stress response. Hello. You have the stressor. You've got a conversation come up where you're going to say no, or an invitation or a text you've got to send that is no. Stress response. So put on Noah's Bay in your headphones, dance around the room like an idiot, complete the stress cycle, and then draft the message. And if you like, send it to somebody. And especially someone who's really good at being like, just drop all of that. That's too much story. Am I sharing too much story? Yes. But say no. Don't over justify it. No, I haven't got capacity. No, I'm not available. That's it. And then dance, and then put on Noah's Bay again, and dance again, and complete the new stress cycle of having done the thing.
Yeah, it's the sending the text and then being like,
yeah,
get out,
absolutely.
Out, get out.
So there's like a before and after stress cycle.
Yeah. But again, it's like a muscle, isn't it?
Yeah, and recognizing that you need to deal with the stress and release the stress and complete the stress cycle around saying no if no is a triggering thing for you. Yeah, don't just say no and assume that that's enough. It's not. It's for your system at this point. It's not enough.
Yeah, and then you're training your body to learn that it's not a disaster, and then if that goes fine, it was fine.
Because all your body know is, I'm stressed, I'm going to die. Oh, we've completed a stress cycle, we're safe. We're not going to die. Great. So the more you teach it that when you say no, you complete stress cycles and you feel safe again, no is going to become no problem.
Yeah, that is great advice, because I know that's something that a lot of people really struggle with, because it, and again, coming back to that, because everything feels immediate, so then even if their instinct is no, they haven't had time to think about why, so they just say yes because it feels like they have to respond and it's easier. And that adds to that whole, the negative cycle rather than the positive one.
I mean, boundaries, again, something we should have been taught in school. I mean, it's great to know about what I can't even remember what it's called now, but it's something like a bow lake. There you go, a bow lake. Yeah. And I can vaguely remember what a bow lake is, but boundaries would have been more useful.
I know, I feel like boundaries and knowing how to do your taxes probably like much more important life skills.
Girl, you know it. If someone had taught me financial fluency, that would have saved me a lot of stress. Still would save me a lot of stress.
Yeah. I know, that's a small business owner issue as well. It's the paradox of it does well, and then it's so much more complicated work that I don't understand.
It's the worst.
Thank you so much. This has been so interesting, because I think it's something that it's obviously so foundational to everything, but people just don't think about at all, or I certainly haven't thought about it as much as I could have done. So if people want to find out more about you or work with you, where can they get in touch with you?
So my website is a really good place to start, and that's workingwithvoice.com. And the program I have coming up in the spring, I have a cohort going for Speak Up for Something Greater Than Yourself. And it's learning about the 4 different embodied languages that help you speak up in a way that looks after you, inspires change, motivates others, and also creates visions. So that's coming up in the spring. I'm not going to lie, it's going to be amazing.
Sounds incredible.
So you can join the wait list for that at the moment. That's going to be in the sort of mid-spring. I also have a big online course, which is the Speaking Flow State, which is kind of learning the work in a video content format in your own time, and that's a year-long engagement, and that's kicking off at the end of the year 2025, autumn. Amazing. That's an autumn thing, so there's different ways you can get involved. I run mini workshops and webinars throughout the year, so if you want a sort of top up of anything or an entry point to like start your speaking flow journey, I highly recommend coming to one of those.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so much. This has been absolutely great.
It's been a pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me to come on. It's been a really valuable conversation. Really interesting to talk about flow with you and hear how you relate to it as well.